Thank you for joining us today. Hello and welcome to the South Sudanese Women Intellectuals Forum. My name is Dr. Anne Lomole, and today we are having a one-in-a-kind session. We have a very special guest with us who I will introduce. Today we'll be speaking poetry, which is something that we haven't done on this forum, I think, ever, apart from when we were discussing the book No Time to Mourn. And what is very interesting is that our guest today was actually one of the contributors to that poetry anthology. So I'd like to welcome Minagano Kape to the show. Minagano is first and foremost a poet. You know, we always introduce ourselves by what we love doing as creatives. And I'm so glad to have her here today because I personally am very passionate about poetry. And I am amazed that a young lady from South Sudan has actually published an anthology, because I grew up only reading poems from Taban Loliong and Okot P. Bitek, and it was a very male-dominated, and probably still is a very male-dominated space. And to find young women and even to make it better, a South Sudanese lady who has actually published an anthology is an amazing, amazing thing. So today we're going to have a very exciting discussion about her newly published poetry anthology titled Uncaging, and she's going to tell us what the inspiration behind that name was. So I'll start by introducing you, Minagano. So Lydia Minagano Kape, she prefers to be called Minagano, is a South Sudanese peace builder, and we have just learned right now that her name Kape means to say, which is amazing because she's basically someone who speaks out her feelings and speaks out her words and expresses herself in terms of poetry. So I'm sure when her parents were naming her, they probably knew and prophesied that this is what she was going to be doing. So she is a South Sudanese peace builder, activist, and poet, and she has worked on various peace building and women, peace, and security efforts through civil society, government boards, and international organizations. She currently serves as a peace and political affairs officer at the Swiss Cooperation Office in South Sudan. In fact, I met her in that capacity when we held our first women's meeting in South Sudan, where we were discussing the UNSCR resolution. And it was amazing to meet her. I had no idea she was a poet, but she went in that capacity as a peace and political affairs officer. She is passionate about sharing a new narrative about her country, South Sudan, the beauty, the people, and the culture through stories and poetry. And I can tell you, because I have actually gone through some of the she has actually done justice to that. And she has contributed to different poetry publications, including No Time to Mourn, an anthology of poems, short stories, and artwork by 41 South Sudanese female writers and artists within the country and refugee camps. And she has just self-published the poetry anthology, Uncaging. And it's really amazing. I can't tell you how excited I am, because this is something that I hoped would happen sometime soon. And she is inspiring actually many of us who are poetry enthusiasts and see ourselves as poets. But that is a story for another day. So welcome, Minagano. We are so happy to have you here and quite privileged. And maybe you can say a few words to the audience. Just say hi before we go into the meat of the discussion.
Hi, Dr. Ann. Thank you, first of all, very much for having me here. And to the audience, thank you for listening in. I'm really happy to be here. I'm happy to be able to share my journey and to be able to share a lot of things about the book that I just published, Uncaging, with all of you. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Minagano. It's so nice to have you on this particular book review Thursday, and we are very privileged to have you. And thank you for actually taking your time to come here and talk to us about your book. So we'll start with you now introducing yourself to us. You know, we can always say a few things about you, but it's always better when someone actually tells you what they're about. So tell us, who is Lydia Minagano Kape? Tell us about yourself in a few words.
Interesting. You've said almost everything about me. But yeah, I'm a South Sudanese who is very, very passionate about peace and about building peace and just society. And I do that in so many ways. And poetry is one of the ways through which I am able to put across my voice and put across my contribution towards building this society that I dream to see, this society that I dream my children or the people that will come after me, after us, to all see and to live in. So this is just one way that I use to contribute into that bigger goal in a
Okay,
nutshell.
great. Great, Minagano. Also, you're breaking up a bit there, but we'll just see how it progresses.
Okay.
Thank you so much for what you've just said, and I can see that peace is something that's really close to your heart, and it's close to most of
Mhm.
our hearts because as South Sudanese, we have not really been at peace for a very long time, and we're hoping that things get better and things change, and one of these days we'll be able to say yes, we are at peace. So, Minagano, poets and creative arts in general usually requires some degree of inspiration. Of course, discipline is also needed because sometimes you don't have the inspiration and you have to find a way to actually put your creative works out there. So, where do you, as the poet, get your inspiration
Mm.
from?
Interesting. I would say I get my inspiration from different things. There is no one particular point or one particular angle that I can say this is, the particular space where I get my inspiration from. It could be from anything, the society I live in, the stories I hear, could be the nature, just looking at the nature sometimes it gives me the inspiration, and how I feel sometimes about certain things. So basically it's me looking around me, around my society, around the things that are happening. Yeah, just everything that is around me is where I mostly draw my inspiration from, and that includes the people, my people, the South Sudanese people, what is happening in the country. So basically it's just a mixture of different points or different things where I draw my inspiration from. Yeah.
Thank you, Minagano, for that. I have seen from the book where when you were writing in the preface, you have talked about topics ranging from patriotism, feminism, patriarchy, sisterhood and womanhood, cultures, dreams, hope,
Hmm.
love, fear, and courage. And these are many of the things that actually drive poetry and drive the creative arts, the
Hmm.
experiences we have as human beings, whether it's just us or it's the people around us. And yes, from your explanation, that's exactly what you have explained, that you are able to draw this inspiration from everything around you. And I think that's important because people also have to relate with your work and it has to speak of the human experience. And I feel like you have actually done this in this book. And we'll be reading some of the excerpts from your book. And just to give people a
Mm.
feel of what you're about as a poet and the range of emotions that you express and the range of topics that you talk about. Now, let's just start at the beginning. When did you start writing poetry and how did your passion for the craft come about? Tell us a little bit about your journey as a poet.
Hmm. Yeah, in that's interesting. I always struggle to to draw the real timeline because it's been quite a zigzag journey. But if I am to trace it, I remember I started writing in high school. But then I was writing, but I did not really quite consider what I was writing as poetry. I did not have any name for it because in my free time I'll just pick my pen and write things in my book and keep it under my pillow probably, and I just think, this is just stuff that I'm writing, and I did not bother to really share it with anyone. So I would say like that is like the first stage when I was just writing things for myself. I was writing things I am hiding it from people. I was not ready to share it with people. And then I think there was a point in my life, 2013, when the 2013 incident happened. I remember I came from school and I was in Juba. And I think that particular incident, it affected me in a certain way. And I remember December 15, I was picking a pen and writing stuff and just writing how I feel, writing what I want to see, writing the future. And I think at that point I shared in the social media, and a couple of people liked it. And then 2017, I joined a group of, even between 2013 and 2017, I was still writing stuff, but I was not sharing most of them. But in 2017, I joined what I would call a growing community of poets, by then spoken word poets, and they would like have spoken open mic events and spoken word poetry, and I loved that community. And by being in that community, I started to find myself writing more and more, because this is a community where we were able to challenge ourselves to write about different things, because we always meet, we share our work, we laugh about it, we have a good time. So it's between 2017 and 2019, this is when I wrote almost most of the work that is in this book. So yeah, when I was writing them, I did not even have a vision that it's going to be a book one day. I was just writing because I have a community that I go back to express myself, most importantly, to express myself, to express my thoughts, to share what I think about the different things that is happening around us. And that is the period that I really, really found myself writing a lot. Yeah. And yeah, I would basically just summarize in terms of timeline. This is like how the journey all started. It's between the period when I was in the community that I realized, well, what I am writing is probably poetry, and let's give it that name and let's accept it. Let's share it more with people. Yeah.
Thank you for that interesting journey that you've shared with us. And many people have actually written poetry over quite a long period of time. And if you started in high school, that makes it more than 5 years, right? And I think that's very interesting. I read something in your book where you say that when you first introduced yourself to this community, you started by saying that I am not a poet. So,
Yes, yes, I
why did you think
remember.
you weren't a poet when you first started out? What was it that made you think that this wasn't poetry you were
Be-
writing? And what changed
yeah,
your
because I
mind?
was I was still in that stage of trying to find myself, trying to name my craft. I did not quite know what it was. And yeah, I quite remember that day very well. I said, well, guys, I am not a poet. I'm just someone who writes on my free time. And sometimes what I write sounds like poems, but I don't know what they are. And I mean, I shared my work and people thought it was poetry. Yeah, but I think I was just still in that stage of trying to define probably the name of my craft, and yeah.
What was the initial reception you got for your, I could call it spoken word or poetry? Like what was the reaction like? And I'm thinking, I'm assuming that, was this in Juba? Was this in Uganda? Where was this? Because I know our people are not so exposed to in terms of poetry. When it comes to performance poetry, they're more exposed to like music and things to do with
Mm,
like live entertainment. But spoken word is something like, oh, that's almost a
mm,
foreign concept to them. What was the reception, and where was this
mm.
that you were doing this uh, performance poetry, basically?
Yeah, correct. So that was in Juba. Nice enough. So it is correct. At the time, poetry was not. That was 2017. Poetry was not
Sorry, Minagano, you're breaking there. I think you've frozen a little bit. So I hope you come back on. Can you hear me?
Can
Oh,
you
there
hear
you are.
me?
Yes, now I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, because I felt like I went off for a bit. Yeah, so I would say the reception was very good. Yeah, yes,
Sorry. Mhm. Go ahead, Minagano.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, I can.
You can hear me?
Yes, yes, I can hear
Okay,
you.
great. So I was saying it is indeed correct. Poetry in 2017, it was not like very common within the South Sudanese entertainment spaces. It was still coming up. But in terms of the reception, I would say the reception was so good because that was a community of young South Sudanese poets, you know. We were just trying to create a space for poetry within our entertainment culture. And so I was received warmly, I was received well. And I would say from then I became part of a community. And that's why at the launch I was telling people that my journey, it has not only helped me to publish a book, but I built a community from all over the country. So like I have people that I consider my family, and I met them all through the poetry spaces where we could meet, organize open mic events, and come together. So the reception was great. But if I am to compare between 2017 and now, I think poetry as a form of art, it has poetry, spoken word poetry as a form of art, it has been growing over the years. And I think as of now, when you talk about poetry, people are excited. People are excited about spoken word poetry shows. People are excited to have poets in their events to come and perform. And to me, I also see that I saw that during the launch of my book, the turnout was like incredible. So many people came. And to me, that shows how much the art has grown over the years, and it continues to grow. And there are so many young South Sudanese who are joining this poetry space, which is very, very encouraging. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. I think I'm sure all the budding poets out there who are listening to this, who have been afraid to take the step and actually just follow their hearts when it comes to poetry, are very encouraged at the moment. And they're, of course, now thinking about ways in which they can advance this craft and even maybe possibly also follow your footsteps in publishing their
Mhm,
poetry. Now, I just
mhm,
wanted to read something from your book that I think explains a lot about this book, and then I'll ask you a question related to that. So, in the introduction, what you have written is that we all have a voice. Some are shackled in chains, others are buried in caves. Their spunk forgotten. I choose to set mine free. I choose to give it wings to let it soar. I think this summarizes adequately what this book is about. So tell us, what was your inspiration? That what drove you towards publishing this book, and why Uncaging? What does it mean to you?
mm, mm. Yeah, just like I said in the beginning, my inspiration comes from everywhere. And I have been writing between 2017 to 2019, and I've written a lot of things. And this is my voice, this is my thoughts on different things that is happening around me, within me, in my community, in my country, and even beyond my country. And I just felt like for a very long time, this voice has not been shared widely, because in as much as we share stories, in as much as we share things, looking inwardly in our thoughts, it can speak to other people. So the stories in Uncaging, they're not necessarily my stories alone. These are the stories of ordinary people that we live with every day. These are stories of South Sudanese, these are stories of Africans, these are stories of what people face all over the world. So I just wanted to share that part of me, that story suit everyone, especially people who can access it. So for them to read and to be able to also help them to think more and think deeper about the things that is happening around them. So it is Uncaging, the title, simply because for people who knows me, I am an introvert. So that means I live a lot in my head. So that means there's a lot of thinking going on in my head, all these stories, all this whatever is it's happening in my head. And sometimes it feels like a burden. And I reached a point where I just wanted to let it out. It feels like I have these stories, I have these things to say, and they all of them are caged somewhere in my head. And so uncaging was to set everything free, to set the voices free, to set the stories free, and just let it liberate it, let it go, and let people um, get to read it, let people get to see it, let people get to learn from it what they can learn. So to me, uncaging represents, I would say, freedom of the voice, like setting my voice free. Maybe I can out and say I give it wings and let it move around to wherever it can go. And I know I am not the only one that needs to uncage. So many of us need to uncage from different things. You know, it might not be necessarily you having to tell your stories, or you having to write a book, but there's so many things that I think we need to set ourselves free from, that is happening within our communities, that is happening within us as human beings, as individuals. So I think it's uncaging because I also want to inspire people to set their voices free, and and to experience the freedom of just letting things out. It's not easy as an introvert.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
always tell my brother that I don't understand introverts and that they trigger me because I'm an extrovert,
Okay.
and I don't understand how people can be drained by other people because I'm energized by people. Thank you so much, John Shulding. I can see you saying nice talk. I'd like to encourage the audience. Sorry, I'd like to encourage the audience to please send any questions that you have for Minagano, any comments, encouragement and all that. I think that would be lovely. Please go ahead and ask any questions, and we'll be able to just slot them into what we're talking about. So, Minagano, me and introverts, we have an issue, but that is
but
something we'll discuss after the interview.
but
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 I'm so
Dr.
glad
Ann,
that, sorry.
we are not drained by people, but we love
Yeah.
people. We love to interact with people, but we just
Uh-huh,
need a moment for ourselves
uh-huh,
to
uh-huh, uh-huh.
re-energize. I think
Okay.
that's how I can explain it. We love people.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Actually, the reason why I'm a bit triggered is because um, my brother is actually an introvert, and he has a friend who's an introvert, and he explained it in such a way that was very strange for me. He basically likened introverts to people who have batteries that actually can go to zero, and they need time to just sit by themselves or hang out by themselves and recharge. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Yeah, we need to recharge for a little bit sometimes. We cannot
Uh-huh,
just go
uh-huh.
on throughout.
Mhm. Okay, good.
Yeah.
So does being an introvert now interfere with you being a performance poet? Does it cause any issues, or it hasn't for you?
No, it hasn't. Just like I said, we love people. I don't fear people. I interact with people. I love performing poetry, and I think I was just reminded of that during the launch, because it's been a very, very long time since I came to the stage to perform poetry, and I did that during the launch, and I was like, wow, I miss doing that. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't interfere with my performances. I love performing poetry, and that's it. Yeah.
Amazing, amazing. I like what you've said about this book being also your way of basically inspiring other people to also find their voice. And
Mm,
one of my favorite pieces in your book is the poem that you've titled "Silence," and for me it really
mm,
resonates with me because I feel that in a way our societies are bringing our culture and even our socialization as South Sudanese,
mm.
and the things that happen to the people who speak out have made us actually mute our voices, just step on and
Correct.
just forget about talking because of the things that we fear that might happen. And I like the way that you say that voice is what I hand my children, because this is
Mm,
what we should do for the generations to come, to open the door
mm,
for them to be able to speak out on issues that affect them. And you also say
mhm,
silence is a tradition that you refuse to pass on to your children. And I think that's a point that has to be emphasized, that we have to walk
mm,
into into a place where we are able to give ourselves the freedom, and even the generations that come after us as South Sudanese, the freedom to talk, to speak out about issues that
mm,
affect our country, and not just
mm,
cover it up because either we are afraid for our safety, we are afraid that we'll be targeted, or afraid our children or our families will be
mm,
targeted. And I like that you speak about that this is a way that
mm,
we set ourselves free. And in fact, poetry and in a sense, art has been at the forefront of many revolutions because in
mhm.
a way it protects the artist, but it still passes the message out there. And I think it's important that
Absolutely.
you speak about that, the fact that
Mm,
you're also opening the doors for others and not only yourself. Now,
mm,
I don't want to go into so much details about the book, but I want you to just give the audience a brief overview of what to expect in terms of content and focus. And maybe I can just read out a few of the poems after, and you can just tell me
mhm.
what you're thinking or behind those particular poems were. So, what exactly should the people watching us expect in terms of content and focus of
Mm,
the book Uncaging?
mm. Yeah, sure. So, if you still don't have a copy of Uncaging, I just want to say Uncaging is, I'd refer to it as salad. Uncaging is not a book that talks about one particular thing, but it more or less talks about everything. Um, it talks about patriotism. It talks about my dreams, our dreams as South Sudanese people. I tapped on things to do with our diversity and our identity as South Sudanese, our unity. I talked about things to do with what do you call it? The beauty of the land, the nature, you know, because there are so many stories out there about South Sudan, and it's always gun stories. There are very few people that talks about how beautiful the Nile is. There are very few people that talks about how beautiful our mountains is. But if you go online, you can find a lot of pictures of the guns and children with the guns and people dying of hunger. That is the story of South Sudan that the world knows. So um, I was very intentional to really talk about the beauty, the beauty that so many people don't have the opportunity to see, the beauty that the media don't really showcase about our country. So I was very intentional about that, and it talks about refuge. And it talks about war and all that. But then also I have a chapter that talks about women, the challenges they face. It talks about early child marriages, and it talks about what I want to tell my my children, my daughters. And then there is I also talked about I think uh, the third chapter of the book. I talked about my journey as a poet, my journey in poetry, like struggling to find my voice, struggling to give my craft a name, just the so many questions that was rattling in my head. And then I also talk about love, and then there are poems that talks about imagination, and and stuff like that. So basically the book has like five chapters. And so the first chapter is called The Dreams We Hold Dear. And then there's a chapter that called She Tales, and then Poetry Mystery, and then Shades of Love. That it's more like a taboo topic in our communities. Unfortunately, we whisper about it, but I try to talk about it very loudly. And then and then the last chapter is called Calming Thoughts. It's more of imagination, and mostly inspired by nature and things I imagine in my head. So basically this is what I can briefly say what the book is all about, but you will get a lot of details when you have a copy of the book. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Minagano. I like the way you talked about shades of love and it being a taboo topic.
I
In a
know.
wonderful way. And yet love runs through the fiber of every human being on this planet. And that's
I
something we should
know.
highlight. And in fact, most of the songs that have been written, most of the poems that have been written have mostly been about love. And this is not something that should remain a taboo. So please go ahead, shout, talk loudly about it until we are not afraid to talk about love. And
Yeah. I-
I also like the angle that you brought in, the fact that you talked about that there's a lot of negative information out there about South Sudan. It's such a negative portrayal of our country. We know we're not perfect, but I love the fact that you have infused your book with positivity and positive
Mhm.
images about South Sudan. And I think that's amazing. I think that's something that maybe we haven't really done a lot of, because even when we talk about poetry and our inspiration, because we're surrounded by so much negativity, I think we
Correct.
tend to go towards more of the negative and the sadness and all the bad
Mhm.
things that are happening. But I love the fact that
Mhm.
you're trying to also shine a positive light on the beauty of our country and the positive story.
Mm.
So that is really
Yeah.
amazing. So
Yeah,
I'll
Dr.
just
Anne,
I'll just yeah, go
I just
ahead.
wanted to comment on that. To me, it was really, really a very personal journey to do that, because I was born here in Juba and I grew up in Juba, and this is like South Sudan is the country that I know, and sometimes it baffles me the stories that people tell about South Sudan. I am not saying South Sudan is perfect, but I have seen very beautiful things. I remember there was a time a friend of mine I met someone from Kenya when I went to Kenya, and she was asking me, do you know how to shoot a gun? Just because I'm from South Sudan, and like she's been hearing a lot of gun stories about South Sudan, and her assumption is if you're from South Sudan, maybe you're a soldier, or you have a gun at home, or you should know how to shoot a gun. And I mean, for a moment I was like, whoa, why are you asking me that? And I mean, that one really, like that one question, it really hit me in a certain way, and it keeps coming to my mind time and again. And when I was writing this book, I was like, oh well, how do I counter things like that? How do I now tell stories that will make them want to come and see South Sudan? Yeah, so that's why I say, like, doing that was really personal and intentional. It was an intentional decision to write about South Sudan in that way.
I think you were probably the right person to write about it in that way, because you grew up in Juba. And for us who didn't grow up within South Sudan, we of course also had possibly a similar image or thinking about what was happening in the country, while all of us were outside the country in exile, in
Mm,
multiple places around the world. And and
mhm,
I actually I had a conversation with someone about this, and what he was telling me was that the people who actually stayed in South Sudan, those who grew up in Juba, they give a completely different story to what we think was happening in the country at that time. And the kind of stories that are being given are amazing, like of a place of peace, a place of development. I don't know if that's what was the case then. Maybe you can enlighten me. But I was quite amazed that we have changed the narrative in the sense that when someone tells us they grew up in Juba, we wonder, okay, how did you survive Juba? I don't know if you have a comment on
Yeah,
that.
yeah, I have encountered that a lot, and I mean, I find myself trying to rap it on people's face that, well, yeah, I am that Juba girl, and whatever perception you have of Juba and you have of me, it's not correct. I'm here to correct it. I'm here to tell you that, well, there is also a story to this part of the world. There is a story behind. There's a beautiful story to this part of the country. There's a beautiful story that comes with the people who have been here. So it's just a question of like, how do we open ourselves up? How do we become so open-minded that we're willing to listen to each other's stories, because we all have stories to tell. And yeah, I mean, I get that most of the times. And someone at some point, someone was telling me, no, you cannot be a Juba girl. You cannot convince me that you grew up in Juba. First of all, how do you know how to speak English like this? And I was like, guys, I mean, sometimes it's just very, very crazy. And to me, it also tells me that people have been told different stories about different places, and not until we take the responsibility of telling our own stories, the people on the other side will not know our true stories. And that does not necessarily only apply to the people who are in Juba alone. The people who are outside Juba, what is their story? Probably even us who are in Juba, we've had a different version of their stories that may be biased sometimes. So how do we create a space where we are all open to tell our stories? We are all open to listen to each other, so that we can be able to learn from each other. We can be able to accept each other with our differences, with the differences of our journeys, the differences of our story, and say, hey, this is your story, and I cannot change it, but let's see how we can make a South Sudanese story out of it. Your story doesn't have to be my story. My story doesn't have to be yours, but it's just creating a common ground where we can accept each other, where we can learn from each other, where we can have like a mutual understanding and benefits. Yeah.
Wow, amazing, amazing, amazing. I think that's something that we haven't really looked into so much because the truth is we were scattered to the corners of this earth, and all of us are coming into this new country with such different cultures, different
Mhm.
perceptions, different mindsets about everything. And it's almost like we are disunited in that sense. First, we are different tribes,
Absolutely.
and then we are also people who grew up in completely different countries and different
Cultures.
cultures.
Yeah.
And you're right,
Mhm.
we do need to create a space where we can sort of harmonize and come up with something that's originally South Sudanese, that borrows
Mhm.
from all the places that we've been. And I think
Mhm.
that's really amazing, the fact that you mentioned that. And I think we need to get people thinking about that harmony and that identity, that we need to create an identity that is South Sudanese, despite the fact that many of us grew up in different parts of this world, and we're coming in with so much different concepts of how life should be, or how things should go, and we have
Mhm.
these biased ideas of other people from other places. You're very right about that. Now I'll
Mm.
read some of the comments. I can see Grace Lege is saying, brilliant mind, Minagano. How can I get the book for my daughter who likes writing? So Grace, at the end of this session, Minagano is going to tell us how people are going to access the books, and she'll tell you where to get it. Rania Alex is saying this talk is interesting. We sure need to uncage ourselves, especially individually. Well done, Minagano. And she's congratulating you there. And Liz Peter is saying the beauty of South Sudan is slowly resurfacing. Yes, we are all about changing the narrative, and
Yeah.
shining a light on the positive. And this is what we're doing in each and every way that we have been equipped to do it. This is what we're doing. And I can see Minagano has chosen poetry as her medium to change the narrative about our country. And Nelson Kwaje is agreeing with the whole concept about shaping narratives through storytelling. Thank you so much, Nelson, for that comment. Now, based on one of the things you just said about someone in Kenya who was asking you whether you've ever held a gun and shot a gun. So I came across one of the poems you've written, Eulogy,
Mm,
where you say, remember us, the youth whose hands were too brittle to carry the guns.
mm,
And so we carried our pens and drew a blueprint for a better tomorrow. I really love this because I feel like, in a
mm,
sense, we have been sort of marginalized as the younger people who probably did not actively participate when it came to fighting for freedom, using guns, or being physically on the
mm,
ground. But we tried to do it through whichever means we could, whether it was through poetry, whether it was through music, whether it was through excelling in what we were doing, where we found
mm,
ourselves, so that in time we would also be able to contribute positively to our country. I think this is a
mm,
conversation that needs to be had because I feel there's a lot of sidelining of those who are considered not to have carried the gun or not to have actively participated in terms of warfare in liberating the country. And it's amazing that
mm,
you actually touched on that, because I think many people don't think about it anymore. The fact that
mm,
there are those who carried the gun and there are those who carried the pen, there are those who used their voices
mhm.
to actually bring the liberation of our country, and we should not forget those people. Maybe you can give a few comments on the thinking behind your poem Eulogy.
Yeah, I think it's just, I was just trying to echo to the fact that there are so many ways to fight a war. And it doesn't necessarily have to be through the guns. And just like you correctly said, even during our liberation times, the people who carried the guns, the people who are at the front lines, and the people who were doing advocacy, like, outside with the outside country to see to it that the cause of South Sudan is listened to, the people who are pursuing like higher level of education, so that when the time of freedom comes, like they can be able to come back to do their building work. So I just wanted to echo that we are all fighting the same cause, but it's just different ways. And then the second thing that I was looking at when writing that poem is, even beyond the liberation time, our liberation time, even right now, young people are being instrumentalized right, left, and center to carry the gun, to use the gun as a means of pursuing certain cost. But we also have a group of young South Sudanese people who have said, oh, we're not going to do it that way. We are still, our dream is still like the prosperity and the development of this country. That is the bigger vision, but we're not going to do it through the gun. We're going to do it through other ways. It could be writing, it could be working for your community, it could be different things. So to me, I just want this group of people also to be remembered as contributors, to be remembered as heroes or heroines who are contributing every day, who are putting their efforts every day to see to it that South Sudan reach the overall vision that we all want, we all have for this country. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you for that, Minagano. It's something that needs to be said. And I really hope that with time, actually, that perception changes, that the only way to fight for freedom or to make impact is to actually pick up a gun. This is something that we need to get rid of as South Sudanese, and hopefully it will happen within our lifetime. That is the hope.
Hopefully.
So I'll cross over to one of the other sections you have written in the anthology, and this one has a lot to do with our experience as women, in especially in terms of being targeted, and this one I think I'll read a lot of it, so I'll try not to read the whole of
Sure.
it so that people can buy the book, but I'll
Okay.
read a bit more of it because this one specifically speaks of our experience as women. And this poem that this is to the audience is titled Our Fears, and it speaks to me because it's something that's close to our hearts as women of South Sudan and women in general in the world. And what
Mm,
Minagano says in the poem is that, I'll just read it out to you. Her hips, her breast calves scare her more than anything. She fears it might render her victim of the system of misconstrued masculinity. They leer at it like a free mining zone. They feel entitled to the gold they like, taking anything they want whenever they choose. And she goes on to say, it's not about her dress, nor the time of the day, like coming home at 7 from fetching water from her brother. And I like the way you talk about Fatima, who is completely dressed up and still
mm,
is targeted. You talk about Mary, who was found in the church compound and assaulted. You talk about this baby who doesn't have the calves, that
mm,
people use as an excuse to
mm.
assault women, and how this is just a result of disrespect for women in general. Tell us a little bit about that. I feel like we need to speak a little bit about that because it's about your experience as a woman, and what you have seen your sisters suffer, whether in South Sudan or around the world.
Yeah, I think as a South Sudanese or as a woman, even if you're not in South Sudan or you're not from South Sudan, all over the world, we have heard of rape cases. We've heard of sexual assault. And to make it worse in our country, even now that with conflict, right, left, right, and center, we see that we hear about women and young girls and even children being raped um, uh, a lot. And and if you sit with people, sometimes there's always this excuse of, oh, what was she wearing? These women, they're not wearing decently, that's why they're being raped. And where was she when she was raped? What was she doing there? What time was it? In most cases, in most conversations that people try to have around the issue of sexual assault, these are the things that come up. But also, like, being a South Sudanese, I've had cases of like little children, like 4-year-old, 5-year-old, like very, very little children who have been raped before. So I was just trying to make a case that let's not say it's because women are being indecent. Let's not say it's because women are moving out. At what point? But it's there's something much more deeper that probably we as a society need to look at. Let us not just try to sugarcoat it, or try to just look at the surface by saying, oh, it's because you have not done that. If you have if you had done it that way, this probably would not have happened to you. I've even heard of stories where like old women, like grandmothers, have been raped. So like, you cannot really convince me that it's because women are dressing in a certain way, that women are moving in a certain way, that women are moving in certain places. So there is something deeper to the rap culture than just the things that we talk about in our circles. And probably as a society, we really need to dissect it and look deeper to be able to address it. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Minagano. Kasang had written a comment there. I can't read it verbatim, but she was basically emphasizing that we do need to be uncaged even as individuals because we are mostly suppressing our voices. And she's reminded me of something we used to do. I grew up in Nairobi, and of course, many South Sudanese grew up in Nairobi. And there was a time that we were very, very, very excited about our country, and we did quite a lot of creative performances based on that excitement and the fact that we wanted to promote girls' education and we wanted to bring peace to our country. And poetry was one of actually the forms that we used to pass our message across. And some of us fell in love with the craft during those days. And it's quite amazing to find that at least other people have carried that torch, and you have finally actually brought one to fruition to the extent of publishing this poetry anthology, Uncaging. Now, every poet and every creative has someone they look up to who they say, this is the person who inspired me. Who is that to you, or who are those to you? Tell us about that.
Oof, that's a difficult one. So I've not been reading a lot of poetry, but I've read a little bit of Maya Angelou, and and I think I've been listening a lot to contemporary poets, mostly from Kenya, spoken word poets. I from the region, I like Mufasa, the Kenyan poet. I love his how he put across his poetry and how he talks about uh, different um, the different things that affect their society in a very artistic way, and in a way that can speak to people on a different level just through his craft. And I think there's one more Kenyan poet that I really admire. She's called what is her name? Mumbi. Yes. Actually, in December, my sister got me her poetry collection as a gift, and I was so excited. Also, I like her craft. But generally, in terms of reading poetry, and even generally reading in general, I read Chimamanda a lot, and I remember like the first time I got Chimamanda's book Americana, and I think that is probably what has like really pushed me into like challenging myself to read more, because it's, I mean, funny enough, I would say I am not an ardent reader like that, but I am challenging myself more and more to read, and it's getting like really really exciting, because people always say that people who write are readers. But to me, I would say that's not completely the case. I am just now immersing myself into reading, and the first book that got me into reading was Americana and Chimamanda, and I think I've read almost all her books. I love how she put across the stories that she writes, and I like Khalid Hosseini. They are not poets necessarily, but with Khalid Hosseini, there's a way that he writes. Because he's also from an Arabic background, his expressions are very poetic in one way or the other. Yeah, I enjoy reading his books. So I think my inspirations are not necessarily only from poets, but I would say partly from poets, but from a different form of writings. Can say that.
Wow, that's amazing. The fact that you actually look into the region for inspiration is actually amazing. And I think generally the craft is taking off in Africa in general, and it's getting more and more infused with female voices. And I think for me, that is what is most exciting about this. Now, of course, as a female voice, when it comes to poetry, there are definitely some challenges that you have experienced. So, what are some of these challenges whether it's in writing, in performing, in acceptance of your path as a poet. You know, the way our African parents go, like, you know, you have to have some kind of basic sort of
Mm,
career that is able to generate for you income. You can't just delve into creativity or music or poetry. You know, they don't understand that concept of following your heart in the sense of creative talent. So what are some of these
mm,
challenges that you have experienced, even as a female poet, and even when it came to publishing this poetry anthology?
mm. As a female poet, well, pretty much within the poetry circle, I wouldn't say there is a particular challenge that I faced just because I'm a female poet. I think it was a very when I joined the community, it was very accepting of me as a poet. I really did not see myself that I was, maybe it is just within that smaller community. I was accepted as a poet first before now putting me into the category of being a woman or being a female or being a male. So I wouldn't say like there's a specific challenge that I face within the community of that craft, but also in terms of pursuing poetry. You know, I am not a full-time poet, right? So I write on my free time. I have a full-time job that I go to. So in most cases, I did not find myself in a position where I had to, like, do the confrontational conversation with my parents. Actually, they did not know that I was doing that. My mom came during the launch, and it was her very first time to see me performing poetry, and she has never like seen me doing that before. So I would say I did not encounter that particular challenge because it was. I'm not pursuing. I have not pursued poetry as my full time um, career or whatsoever. But in terms of publishing and maybe the journey that I had to go through at a very personal level, I think it's number one, they are not very many female voices in poetry in the country, probably. And I would say now they're coming up, but these are like people who are coming after us. But before us, there are probably a handful of them that one could look up to and say, well, there's a possibility in this area because so and so have done it. So there are very few of them, and like over the years when I joined this space, I've seen people like Dr. Ayak Deng. She published, and I was excited. At least it they open the way for other people to publish more. There's Dr. Ayak Deng and Apuk Aiwal, and like looking at these like women publishing, and then it really encouraged me. It gave me the push to go ahead with publishing my collection. But prior to that, there was always this question of, oh, and what is that? How am I going to put it out there, and who has done it before? And it's just that it's more of a self-sabotaging uh,
Yeah.
journey, where probably because you've not seen anyone done that before.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I think this took me a very long time to overcome, and not
Yeah.
necessarily also because I've not seen other people doing it, but also
Mm.
like me overthinking what the reception
Yeah.
would look like.
Yeah.
Is it good
Mm.
enough?
Yeah.
So it
Mm.
really, really took me a lot of time to
Mm.
overcome that and to say, well, whatever it is, if it's not accepted, whatever, I am ready. Let me just share it and
Yeah.
and just
Yeah.
prepare myself for
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
whatever will come out of it. So
Mm.
it was
Mm.
quite a journey, and this
Yeah.
is it's a challenge in one way or the other, but
Mm.
like being able to, I'm sorry, I'm now talking about how I have overcome
Go
it.
ahead, go ahead.
Being part of the, what I would say, the No Time to Mourn poetry anthology.
Mm.
There is a very long story before that, and there was a retreat that brought together like a lot of South Sudanese female writers. Some of them are poets, some of them are storytellers, some of them are script writers, and just like being in that space and like looking around and seeing that there are so many other South Sudanese who are doing this, it probably also gave me uh, the courage to finally, push push the book out there, and also the fact that the poetry community in this country is the community of poets in this country is really really growing, and there are a lot of young girls that continue to look up to some of us. So it's also one way. I thought to myself, it's one way of also like opening the horizon, like just because I did not find so many people before me who showed me that it is possible, I can be one of these people who will show the people who will come after me that it is possible, there's a possibility here. So also me wanting to be that person who will further open the face for the people to come was also one way that that helped me to overcome whatever was going on in my head, the self-sabotaging feeling in me. Yeah.
Wow, thank you for that. Yes, we talk a lot about self-sabotage and imposter
Mhm.
syndrome, and the fact that we never really feel ready. We never feel
Mhm.
good enough. However,
Mm.
we know that overthinking and the tendency to want perfection is actually an enemy to progress. So for me, I've formed a policy where I just tell myself,
Mm.
okay, let me go for it. If it fails, it fails. If it
Oh
doesn't
my,
fail, then well and good. At least I tried.
I
Just
am
go for it,
learning that.
because yes, we also don't want to look back and say, okay,
Yeah,
I wish, and
true,
end up with a lot of regrets in this life. So I feel like
true.
the fact that you took the courage and took the step and just said, I'm going to go ahead and publish this poems, and
Mm.
I'm going to then perform the poetry, whatever, wherever the seeds fall, that's where they're going to fall. I think that is amazing. It
Mm.
takes a lot of courage to do that. Now we'll try and wind up in maybe the next 10 minutes, but I wanted you to give us just a short verse, maybe read it out for us so that we get a feel of Minagano Kape, the performance poet, not the written
Ha.
poet.
Do you want to give me, do you have a poem in mind that you want me to read? I always struggle with
Okay,
picking what
great.
to read.
Maybe I can see. Um, so maybe you can read Unchained. One of your poems,
Unchained,
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 page
Unchained.
57.
Wait, 57.
Yes.
Okay, 57. Let me see. There's so many that sometimes I forget about them.
No, it's okay. You don't. You
Yeah,
remember
okay.
your work, but of course,
Because I was trying to figure out Unchained. Which one is that? Yeah.
rising, and it speaks to women as a forum for women. I think that would be the best one for you to do today. The men can get
Awesome,
their
awesome.
versions when they come and pay for your performance
They will
for
get to read about them when they buy the book.
exactly.
Oh my God. Yeah. So Unchained is a very, I think it's a very short poem, and if you allow me, I think I would read Letter to My Not Yet Born Daughter. I love it. After. Okay.
That's fine. Go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. So I'll read Unchained. Rise, woman, rise. Rise, woman, rise from the demise, reclaim your pride, know your prize. Sing, woman, sing. The songs you were told were verboten. Dance, woman, dance to the melody that tickles your heart. Speak, woman, speak. Your voice is God's communication to the human race. That's it.
Amazing, amazing. I think I
Yeah.
especially love that part for your voice is God's communication to the human race. I hope everybody
Yeah.
had that. Yes, and takes it seriously. Thank
Yeah.
you
We
for that,
probably need to
Mariana.
echo that. The women need to, all of us, probably all of us need to acknowledge and accept that, like, really God speak through all of us.
That
And
is true.
when we
Mhm.
realize that, when we acknowledge that, we will not shy
Mhm.
away from sharing our voices with
Yeah,
everyone.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you
So I
so much,
read a
Mariana, for that.
letter.
Please go ahead and read a letter to
To
your
my
daughter.
naughty born daughter. Okay. Dear daughter, on the day you will be born, I will place on your head the crown given to me by my mother, the one her mother gave her at birth as a sign of birth of a new queen. Dear daughter, your crowning is only a ritual. The celebration will start on the day I will know I am carrying a queen. With every kick that you will make, we will sound drums, celebrating the warrior queen you are meant to become. With every kick you will make, your grannies will dance in their graves, singing songs for a queen beautiful and brave. With every kick that you will make, we will look at the stars, naming you after the biggest and the brightest, because you are light, the moon, the stars, the sun that shines. You are divine, an enigma to define, dear daughter. As you grow, shine. Do not dull your spark, for those accustomed to the dark will try to tell you you should stand at the back. Dear daughter, tell them you are from the lineage of queens. You had been crowned long before you were born. Show them the crown of treasure you carry on your head. Tell them you stand out because you are a queen. That's it.
That is so, so beautiful, Mariana.
Thank you. I think we should start speaking like mothers. Mothers should speak very a lot of
Very,
positive um,
yes, a lot of
light and
positivity into
positivity
the
into
lives
their
and
children at a very young
yes,
age, because
yes, yes,
this will help them to grow up into like very confident women in the future. Because I mean, once you instill that in their heads, they only grow up and they're capitalizing on the foundation that you have given them, appreciating them and making them recognize, making them know who they really are. If they know that from a very young age, I don't think there's anything that can shake them. So, like, I think mothers should really invest in that, the early childhood education. What you feed your child at a very young age will it's just like planting.
yeah,
When you plant, what do I say, you plant a sorghum, you cannot harvest a
mhm,
maize, right? So you
yeah,
sow
that's
what you
true.
plant. So let
Yeah,
us plant the right seeds
mhm,
into the minds, into the hearts of
mhm,
our young children, not necessarily female children alone, but both
yeah.
male and female children. Yeah.
Yeah, you're very right, Minagano. And I like that you said that because it basically gives us the responsibility to ensure that our children are also get to a point where they have the confidence to stand up to whatever comes their way
Mhm.
in life. Because of course, life will not always be smooth sailing. But if they have a solid foundation and they have been told that they can overcome anything, and they have been given the tools and the skills to be able to do that, then we put them at a better place in life than they would have been if we had not spoken that life and that positivity to them at a very early age. Now,
Absolutely.
as we wrap up, we want to know: is there going to be a book tour? When do we expect it? Where is this going to happen? And what is next for Minagano Cafe?
Ha. Exciting. A book tour sounds like an exciting idea. But I mean, really, I know a book tour would be an exciting idea because simply because there's so many people from the different parts of the country and also outside the country that are asking about the book and they want to know more. But also, I know that there are challenges that comes with it in terms of financing. I have self-published this book, so it also comes with a with its own challenges when it comes to financing. So I cannot like really be able to guarantee a book tour at this point in time, but I'm happy if there is someone who is willing to support me to do this book tour
Amazing.
around the country or even outside the country. I will be very, very excited about it. So I am open to that idea. But
Mhm.
as of now, I have launched it in Juba, but I also look forward to like have more events within Juba
Mhm. Mhm.
or maybe places that are around South Sudan, maybe
Mhm.
other states, maybe one or two I can manage,
Mhm.
but I am
Mhm.
open to the idea of um, of a book tour. But yeah, but I have my own limitation when it comes to
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
In regards to what is next for Minagano, I am just a new mother. Let me relax. So I,
You know, we try
I
to push it because we also don't want you to lose momentum. Like you just keep going, keep going, keep going.
remember,
So that
remember,
we get
remember when
more
someone
and
is,
more anthologies churned out.
South Sudanese would say, "This is still a nafasa. Let them relax. Let them eat. Let them whatever." But yeah,
Patience carries us.
no, I remember I refer to this book as my baby because
Mhm.
I just want to like to give as creatives, I think being a creative and creating things feels like pregnancy. So once you have creative stuff within you, there's no way you can bury it in you. It has to come out. Just like a
That's
pregnant
true.
woman, when you're pregnant, you have a baby, the baby has
Mhm.
to come out. It doesn't matter how.
Mhm.
If
Yeah.
it is premature, if it is through
Mhm.
C-section, whatever form, what is
Mhm.
growing inside you just has to come out. And this is what happened to me. Like I have kept my baby for a very long time within, and I just managed to really push her out.
Yeah.
And she, I said she is a baby that have overstayed. Probably she came out talking. Yeah. So I still don't have a concrete idea of what I'm going to do next. But just like I said, this collection of poetry is written between 2017 and 2019, and I have not
Mhm.
been. There are things that probably I wrote after that
Mhm.
that are not part of this book. I don't know when, but I am going to continue to create. And
Mhm.
all I can say is that that's not going to be my only baby. I still
Mhm.
want to have other babies. So I can just say that we're going to have other babies, but I cannot tell when.
Okay, great, great, great. I think that's an adequate answer and a very honest one. And as
Yeah.
you've heard Minagano saying, she's open to support for those who would like to support her to actually do a book tour, whether it's within South Sudan or outside the country, within Africa or worldwide. She's open to those suggestions and she's open to the assistance. I know there are many of you who actually love poetry and love the craft and would like her to come and just be able to do performance poetry and speak to you and open her voice as she has in this book. So if you're willing to support her, please, please, please do so. And we would really want to see you in Nairobi, Minagano, because I'm currently in Nairobi. So when you get the chance, please come to Nairobi. We will support you any way we can, and get a crowd for you so that we can celebrate you as one of our newest South Sudanese female poets, newly published, that is, South Sudanese female
Great,
poets. Now, there are
great.
many people who are asking, where can they get this amazing anthology? Where can they get it?
I am still figuring out a lot of the distribution bit of this publication. At the moment, if you're in Juba, there's a link that I share on my social media platform, my Facebook page at Minagano Cape. So there's a link where you can just order, and we have someone who can just deliver to you the book at your doorsteps. You don't have to come look for it. But also, I am looking into like taking it to other bookshops within bookstores within Juba, and probably the next point where you can be able to get it that I'm still working on is I am trying to have the book on Amazon so that you can be able to purchase it directly. And this is mostly for the people who are outside the country, and they have been asking, but currently we are working on getting the book at Amazon so that they will purchase. So I should be able to communicate once the book is on Amazon for people who are outside South Sudan and would like to purchase it, to know when it's available. And I will also provide that information on my Facebook page, because I think this is a platform where so many people can be able to access me from, and it's at Minagano Cape. Yeah.
Thank you, Minagano, for that. I hope you are able to sort out the Amazon distribution, and I'm sure you will. We will also
Yeah.
play our part and maybe just put up the book on our page, and the link that you have shared
Mm.
for people to access, for those who are able to access from Juba. And hopefully now with time, as you figure out how to deliver it to the rest of the country and the rest of the world, then people are able to access this great work that you have done representing South Sudan and also the women of South Sudan. Now,
Mm.
I'd like some final words from you, maybe advice to budding poets out there, the do's and the don'ts, and what you think should be done differently, and basically just a conclusion on poetry and what it means to you, and the
Mm.
journey going forward.
Okay. Maybe to the poets who are out there, I think the first do's that I would say is join a community. It's exciting to be part of the poetry community, because this is where you can get encouragement. This is where you sometimes get inspiration to continue pushing, to continue writing, and write, continue to write as much as you can. But also, as someone who writes, sometimes I know there are moments where the writer's block, you cannot write anything. Don't force yourself. I wouldn't like really advise anyone to force themselves into writing when they are not getting themselves, they're not in that space where the writing comes. So don't force yourself, and don't feel bad that you are not writing as often. I think sometimes you just need, that break to give your mind time to refresh. And in most cases, when you come back with more energy, more ideas, and more inspiration. What else do I want to say? um, don't doubt yourself. That is in the don't doubt yourself. And also don't overthink so many things. So write your poetry, share with people, strive to put out good poetry, but don't strive for perfection, because I think that is also where a lot of people find challenges. You'll find someone, you have a good piece of work, but what you want is perfection, and yeah, it's a challenge. Just take the courage to share your work, don't doubt your work, and yeah, that's what I can say. What is the other part of the question? I remember two questions. I cannot hear you. You're muted.
Oh, sorry. Yes, from your experience, what would you advise the budding poets out there to do differently? I think you've mentioned a few. Is there anything you
Yeah.
want to add?
But there's another there's another what is it? There's another, you asked me two questions, I remember.
Final words, basically,
Ah,
do's and don'ts, and what you would do differently from the experience you've had so far.
okay. Okay. So I think I've spoken on the first one. Just don't doubt yourself, share your work out there and join a community. And in terms of in terms of final work words and what poetry means to me, I would say poetry has given me the platform to be able to like really reach so many people that I would not be able to reach or speak to in my day-to-day life, in my day-to-day interaction. So I think poetry has given me that space. It has given me that voice to speak to people that I don't even know, and I don't take that for granted, because sometimes, sometimes I share my poems on social media, and then you'll find one or two people reaching out to you and saying that, oh, really, that one really spoke to me, and thank you for doing that. I think like getting such feedbacks also, it gives me a lot of joy, just knowing that whatever that I write, sometimes I don't think that it's worth reading, is really speaking to other people, it's changing life out there, it's really encouraging. And I think writing poetry has also opened me up to the realization that words are powerful, writing is powerful, and to me, this is what I have become really passionate about in the past few years: telling stories, telling South Sudanese stories, but also, to be very specific, telling South Sudanese women stories. And I think from 2019 to now, I have been working on that with a couple of my friends who are female poets as well. We have created a space called Heroines Unspoken Tales, and the intention is to see to it that we mobilize women to be the authors of their stories. And when we look at our history, we look at the different stories that are told throughout history, we see that the stories of women are missing. So how do we now, at this point in time, like as people who love telling stories, as people who love writing, as women who love writing, how do we come together to make sure that we document these stories, so such that when I miss out on the stories of what my grandmother, what my great grandmother have done, how do we ensure that the stories of what my mother or what I am doing is not also lost somehow in the way? Yeah. So I think at this point, I really want to put in a lot of energy and effort towards working towards documenting and writing women's stories, but also, most importantly, just giving women the space to do that for themselves, because it is part of recording history. Probably in the years to come, people will ask, well, what did you do at your time? So we should be able to refer our great grandchildren to a data that is stored somewhere that will tell them what the women in our generations have done, what the women in the generations of our mothers have done. We cannot afford to continue losing women's stories anymore. We have to record them, we have to document them, because they are a source of inspiration even for the generations that will come after us. So I'm really really excited about this, and I mean I'm looking forward to what will come out of it. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. That this is a vision that will span across generations, and that is what we are here for. We're here to impact generations that will come way, way after we are gone, and that's amazing. Yes, our stories must be recorded because it will be a source of inspiration, and it will be a guiding light for those who come after us, and it will give them the confidence to be able to even achieve the impossible, because they will look at us in our situations as we are right now, with all the difficulties that we are facing, and see that we also overcame. And it should not be difficult for them to overcome whatever they face. Thank you so much for creating that space. I will end by reading a few words from your preface, because I want the audience to go with an idea of who you are and what inspires you. And this is a
Sure.
part that I really liked, and I'll just read it verbatim. Words by Minagano Kape from the preface for her new poetry anthology, Uncaging. I write poetry to understand my world and the world around me. I write poetry to ask questions, to seek answers, and awaken others. I write poetry to openly and honestly express my thoughts and try and tell, even if not always successfully, 1,000 tales in the line or a stanza. I write poetry to bring to life the experiences and voices of those who have lost memory of or shunned out of convenience their own voices. I write poetry, hoping to unleash words out of the lips of those whose tongues cannot say anything different from what has been thrust beneath their throats. I write poetry to awaken the stories and songs buried with our ancestors. I write poetry to connect the hanging dots and bring to light untold tales. I can only do that if I set my own voice free. Hence, this poetry collection, Uncaging, is first and foremost my endeavor to set my voice free, hoping it will help others to do the same. And I think that is amazing and inspiring. And thank you so much for this amazing book. I'm just going to put it to the screen so that I can show everybody that I got my copy. And I'd like to
Thank
support
you.
Minagano Kape, support her art, support her craft, support her in any way that you can. And the first thing you can do is get the copy of this book for those who are able to access it. And as she figures out ways of distributing to the rest of the world, we hope that it will reach you where you are in whichever corner of this earth. And you will also be inspired by what she has done. Minagano, I believe you're going to inspire a whole generation of poets who will follow their path, who will follow the fire that burns within their soul, and will allow themselves to give birth to these voices that they have kept within them, that have been silenced by society or by experiences and hardships that they have faced. And we thank you so much for coming on the South Sudanese Women Intellectuals Forum, and also showing us a bit about what you are about and talking about your poetry anthology. And we are so, so excited for the things that you're going to do in the future. Thank you so much, Minagano.
Thank you very much for having me, Dr. Anne. I'm really happy to
You're
be here.
welcome. You're welcome
Yeah, and
anytime,
thank you
anytime
very much
you're
for the
welcome.
people who are listening to this conversation. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Minagano. I'd like
Yeah.
to finally say thank you to the audience, for those who stayed with us up to this time, and even for those who joined in. Thank you so much for joining in. This is part of the kind of support we are giving our people who are trying their best to actually shine a light on positive stories and positive things from our country. So thank you so much for joining us. Please feel free to reach out to us on the page and also directly to Minagano if you'd like to support her craft, or to even get a copy of her book. We will actually post a link that she'll provide us with for those who are able to access it. Please go out and support her in huge numbers. And we are so, so privileged to have had her on this platform, and we know that she's going places, and we're going to say we were the first, to host Nagano Kape, one of the greatest poets from South Sudan. Thank you so much for joining us, Nagano.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so
Bye.
much. Bye. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.